Thanks to all of the witnesses. We'll now have some rounds of questioning. I will start, and let me start with you, Ms. Miguel. So it's September 27th, 2024, Hurricane Helen hits Georgia, hits your home, causing very significant damage. I think we've got a picture of some of the damage here. Let's have a look. Does this look pretty familiar to you?
It does.
It looks pretty severe. I mean, that's a massive tree right there in the front part of your home, and you're an Allstate policyholder. Is that correct?
Correct.
And Allstate sends out an adjuster. You said pretty quickly just a moment ago. Is that
about
correct?
3 weeks after?
Oh, well, that's not very quick. Okay, 3 weeks after. All right, and that you were told at the time in this first inspection verbally that the adjuster agreed with you this was very severe damage. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
I think we maybe have a second picture. Let's look at another view of this just to give a real impression. Here's a breezeway that looks to be nearly completely destroyed. You can see some of that roof damage, quite extensive, that you were talking about in your testimony. All of this looks familiar to you, I'm sure.
Yes.
Now, after this first adjuster agrees with you that, yes, there's very significant damage, what did Allstate, when they finally came back with an actual assessment, a real number, what was that number again?
$46,000.
$46,000. So you went to considerable expense on your own. You hired your own independent adjuster to come back out and do all of this over again. And that person, looking at all of this evidence, that person found that the damage was in the neighborhood of what?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, how your independent adjuster, how much did that person estimate the damage was?
$497,000.
$497,000. Allstate offered you 40, basically.
Correct.
And you're still waiting for this process to be resolved all this time later. Is that right?
That's right.
Let me just ask you now, Mr. Schroeder, because you were that first adjuster who worked for Allstate who came out to look at this home. You were a field adjuster deployed for Allstate through pilot catastrophe. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And you were the first one to inspect Ms. Miguel's home after the hurricane. Is that right?
Yeah.
And you went in person, I think. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you spent several hours, Ms. Miguel said in her testimony a moment ago, you spent several hours doing a very thorough inspection. Is that your memory also?
Yeah, that's correct.
And how serious would you say the damage was in your own, just your personal recollection?
Extremely, probably the most serious that I saw on this deployment.
Wow, the most serious that you saw on the deployment, which makes sense given these photos. So you start, if I understand correctly, you start to prepare an estimate for a full replacement of this breezeway right here. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's correct.
But then you were instructed, you were told by the higher ups, no, we're not going to do a full replacement of the breezeway. So only do an assessment for a partial replacement of the breezeway. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
okay.
correct.
So then you start working on that, and you're working to get as big of a damage claim as you can from Ms. Miguel in line with the facts after you've already been told, no, we're not going to do the full thing. And then before you can even complete your work, you're taken off the case. Is that right?
Yes.
Why do you think that happened?
I was told it was due to time I was taking too long, but I don't believe that is the case. I think that Allstate saw from this and my recently prior estimates of being very thorough and complete and going back and forth with reviewers on coverage that it was going to be a higher estimate and it would be more cost effective to reassign it to an adjuster that would listen better.
Yeah, an adjuster who would lowball the policyholder, really. I mean, that's what we're talking about. You're removed from the case. They took 3 weeks to send you out to begin with, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're removed once it looks like you're actually going to do some justice for Ms. Miguel. Let me just ask you more broadly, Mr. Schroeder, have you ever been told to change estimates to reduce payouts?
Yeah, frequently.
And when you've pushed back on this, if you've ever said no, what happens then?
If I say no, then the claims typically get reassigned due to, they say, either lack of compliance or other reasons like I'm taking too long.
In your experience, was this kind of thing a one-off thing or was this a pattern?
This was definitely a pattern.
Is it fair to say then that Allstate's priority in your experience was not getting the best possible award for their clients, it was in protecting their bottom line?
certainly in protecting their bottom line, yeah.
Mr. Milliken, let me just come to you because you were then yet another adjuster in this same case sent out to look at Ms. Miguel's property. You worked as a field adjuster for Allstate through pilot catastrophe for about 8 years. Do I have that right?
At least 8 years, yes.
Yeah. In that time, you have personally inspected hundreds of properties damaged after storms and disasters. Is that fair to say?
Thousands.
Thousands. And you're trained to determine the extent and cause of the damage and how much it costs to repair it. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me just ask you about Ms. Miguel's claim. You were assigned to re-inspect her home, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you testified earlier that you went about that diligently. You could see that there was very extensive damage. That was your initial impression. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
And you reviewed all of the reports. There was an engineer's report by this time. There was the public adjuster's report. You reviewed all of those things diligently. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
When you submitted your report to Allstate recommending several $100,000 worth of payments to Ms. Miguel and her husband, what happened then?
My estimate was rejected, and I was advised to alter it to a lower figure.
So you were told to alter the estimate and to alter your findings as well?
I was told to alter my estimate. I don't know that the findings was told to be altered.
Were the alterations that you were told to make, were those consistent with your own review of the property and your own assessment of the damage?
No, sir.
Did you write that up in a detailed estimate, what you were told to do?
I did, yes, sir.
And Allstate then, they send that estimate ultimately to the property owner, is that correct?
I'm obligated to send the estimate to the policyholder.
And is there any record anywhere the policyholder would ever know that your initial findings, your recommendations were rejected and somebody told you to come in and alter them?
No, sir.
Let me just ask you more broadly. Have you ever been told in other cases with Allstate to alter or delete your findings?
Absolutely.
In fact, you testified just a second ago, I think, that you were frequently asked to alter factual findings, delete material, and sometimes include items that were false. Did I hear you correctly when you said that?
Yes, sir.
In the overwhelming majority of cases where you were asked to do something like this, did that cause the estimate to the policyholder to go up or to go down?
To go down.
What is your assessment of what Allstate's ultimate goal here is? Is it to pay out the policy according to the terms of the policy to the best extent they can, or is it to protect their bottom line and to use you and your report as necessary to meet that end, to make sure they make as much money as possible?
100% to use me to enable them to make as much money as possible.
And you would say that this is a pattern. This isn't just something that happened one time like in Ms. Miguel's case. You've been doing this for a long time, and you've observed this to be a pattern with Allstate and in the industry.
I have, yes, sir.
Thank you for your testimony. Senator Kim.